Once upon a time, in a small hillside town, there lived a young man named Jacob, carrying a burden no one could see. Jacob's mind felt like a crowded freeway at rush hour. Cars of thought speeding in every direction, horns blaring, brakes screeching. Work deadlines, college loans, regrets from the past, fears about the future. And worst of all, silence at night was his greatest enemy. The moment the world went quiet, his mind turned into a roaring stadium. One sleepless Thursday night, Jacob's friend told him about an old Zen master who lived in a cabin high in the mountains of Oregon. "They say he doesn't just give advice, he gives experiences," the friend said. Jacob laughed at the idea. But 2 weeks later, there he was, climbing the steep trail toward the cabin, desperate for peace. When Jacob finally reached the cabin, the sun was dipping low. The air smelled of pine, and a small river whispered nearby. On the porch sat the Zen master, calm eyes, weathered face, sipping tea as if the world had no rush. Jacob stood there feeling awkward and said, "Sir, my mind just won't stop. I'm tired, anxious. I just want peace. How can I empty my mind? Can you help me?" The master's lips curled into a soft smile. "Peace, you say? I can help, but you must be willing to follow my instructions exactly." Jacob nodded quickly, anything to silence the chaos in his head. The master walked Jacob to a small clearing behind the cabin. There, sitting on the ground, was a wooden bucket filled to the top, not with water, but with dry sand. Next to it was an empty glass jar. "Your task," the master said, "is to fit all of this sand into this jar without spilling a single grain." Jacob frowned. "But that's impossible. The jar's way too small." The master said nothing. He simply placed the jar and bucket in front of Jacob and walked back to the porch. Jacob tried everything, pouring slowly, scooping carefully, but the sand overflowed every time. Minutes turned into hours. His knees ached from kneeling and frustration boiled inside him. "This is ridiculous," Jacob muttered. "There's no way." From the porch, the master called out, "Jacob, what's on your mind right now?" "Everything," Jacob snapped. "I'm thinking about how much sand there is, how small the jar is, how I'll never finish." The master nodded knowingly. "Exactly. You're trying to fill a small jar while it's already crammed full, with your worries, fears, and regrets, just like your mind." The master walked over, picked up the jar, and gently emptied the sand onto the ground. Then he placed a few smooth, heavy stones inside first. "These stones," he said, "represent the most important things in life. Your health, your family, your relationships, your purpose, and your spiritual peace. Always start with them." Next, he poured in a handful of small pebbles. They slipped neatly into the gaps between the stones. "These pebbles," the master continued, "are the other important things. Your job, career, bills, and daily responsibilities." Then he picked up the sand and let it flow gently between the pebbles and stones, filling every last space without spilling a grain. "This sand," he continued, "represents the less important stuff: TV, social media, material things. Finally, the remaining sand that doesn't fit represents the things that only drain you: worries, distractions, stress, overthinking, and negativity." The master looked at Jacob and smiled. "See? When you focus on the big things first, the smaller things naturally find their place. But if you start with the sand, the endless tiny distractions, you'll never have room for what truly matters. That's when life feels cluttered, chaotic, and overwhelming." He tapped the jar softly. "But when the big stones are set first, there's always room for a little sand, and it will never disturb your peace." Jacob stared at the jar, his frustration melting into clarity. For the first time in years, his brain wasn't racing. It was quiet, present. So, peace comes from putting first things first. not trying to control every grain of sand," Jacob said softly. The master smiled. "Peace comes when you choose what deserves space in your mind and let the rest stay on the ground." That night, Jacob stayed in the master's guest room. The mountain air was crisp, and for the first time in months, he fell asleep without his mind wandering to the past or worrying about the future. When he woke, the world felt different, not because it had changed, but because he had. On his hike back down the mountain, Jacob noticed the sound of birds, the sparkle of sunlight on the river, the crunch of dirt under his boots. His mind was no longer a freeway. It was a quiet country road with plenty of space to breathe. Life often feels overwhelming because we try to carry too much at once. The key to true peace lies in focusing on what matters most: your health, family, and purpose. Peace isn't about emptying your mind of every thought. It's about choosing which thoughts deserve to stay. Life will always bring noise, worries, deadlines, and distractions. But when you prioritize right, everything else falls into place. When you place the big stones first, the rest, distractions, worries, overthinking, and negativity will settle like sand, spilling over only where it belongs. By setting your priorities, even the tiniest moments of stillness can bring deep, lasting peace and clarity to your life. Please subscribe for more life-changing stories, and I'll see you in the next video.